we would like to welcome Arindam from Atomberg on this context. Because obviously scaling and marketplaces is something Atomberg has done phenomenally well. If some of you are not aware, you will be. They are the obviously number one selling fans on Amazon, if I would be accurate, or if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. But the idea is they have really figured out Amazon right, or marketplaces right, for scaling their own, a consumer electronics business, right? Specifically targeting on fans. And to be honest, Arindam is obviously the CMO at Atomberg, one of the founding members at building that team. But more importantly, he's one of those key people which I also felt would be great as teachers, right? And he's passionately been doing that himself on his Twitter, right, for sharing his journey or insights around building the D2C playbook. Now, while my interest was to get him for as much long period as possible, from his because Atomberg has been successful raising funds, it's even harder to get him for his time that he has taken out. So I really appreciate him coming with us on this journey. That being said, Arindam sort of running the slides for Arindam, but Arindam, welcome to Expert, and I mean a round of applause if you can just show the gesture. We will.
Thank you so much, Sharat.
Yes, and please, the stage is yours. Yes.
Yeah. So welcome, guys. I think good to see so many of you. I've gone through all of your profiles, and like you guys are doing a phenomenal job scaling up your brands at different stages. So before I start, I'll just tell a couple of minutes about Atomberg, what we have been doing and all. I don't know if all of you are aware, or some of you might be aware of what we've been doing. So we are the last category that you could think of when you think of e-com. So we actually sell fans, ceiling fans, and we started selling when the term D2C wasn't even known to anyone. So we started selling in 2015, and it's been close to around 6 years now. And when we talked to people, when we told investors that we are going to sell fans online, people started laughing. Who the hell buys fans online? Who the hell even buy things before buying fans? But we figured out that everything that could go in the e-com route would definitely go. And we're glad that we made that move very early in our journey 6 years back. Currently, we do close to around 15 crores per month on e-com alone. But we are not only an e-com brand. We are an omni-channel brand. We are present heavily in offline as well, present in 120 odd cities, have close to 12,000 odd counters, retail presence. So we are a pure omni-channel brand. 3 main channels. The marketplaces is a big channel. Our own D2C website is a big channel. And trade is, again, a very big channel. So yeah, through this journey of scaling from zero to in a category like this, where again, it's a very price sensitive category, same problems we had faced. There are well-known brands like Havells, Crompton, Bajaj, etc., selling at a lower price. How do you crack it? Like, how do you get the flywheel moving? So we did this pretty well in Amazon. On Amazon, we'll have close to around 25% share. Flipkart, again, we're doing pretty well, have double-digit share on Flipkart. And this is something that has gone from strength to strength as we have scaled. So we started with ceiling fans, then also did the same for pedestal fans, wall fans, exhaust fans. Also launching our mixer grinders next month. So hopefully that would also, again, that's the e-com heavy category, and hopefully that would also do well for us. So what I'll do today is, let's keep the session very interactive. So I've gone through all the questions that you guys have shared, and instead of me just talking about theoretical frameworks, and also I don't have a lot of theoretical frameworks. So e-com at the end of the day is very simple. There's only one fundamental equation. You need people on your page, and you need conversion rates to be high. So everything else that we do operationally is to figure out how to get more people to your page and how to improve your conversion rates. So from a theoretical point of view, I don't think there is anything that I'll say that you guys won't know. So we'll keep it more interactive. We'll address your questions and queries. And also what we need to realize is what is true for one category might not be true for other categories. The average selling prices play a major role. The competition landscape plays a major role. If you have a very well-funded player in your category and they are ruining the advertising costs for everyone, there's nothing much that you can do in your category at that point. So the challenges will be different for different categories, for different companies, and we take those challenges. And I'll also share some few hacks which we have figured out over the years, how to tackle different marketplaces in a different way. Amazon works in a different way. Flipkart works in a different way. A Paytm Mall or a Tata Click works in a different way. A Cred works in a different way. So there are some key pointers, finer points there, which I can again share from the learnings that I have had over the last 6 years in building this brand from scratch. So yeah, so what I'll do is I'll start with, I think, again, this is a flywheel that all of you guys will know. And like any flywheel, right? Yeah, Sharad, you can move to the next slide. It's a very, very common, very, very simple flywheel. So you start with a perfect listing and operations. You get the listing right, you get the A+ content right, you get the bullet points right, you get the images right, and you get the operations right. Operations is very, very important. When I say operations, most of the categories, people are not ready to wait for more than 48 hours for any purchase. So Amazon has made us used to that through their Prime, and also even none of us wait for more than 48 hours. We look at time to deliver is one of the most important points before making a purchase. So you start with that. Now the first thing is you don't have any ratings and reviews. You don't have any listing history. So the brand is unknown. So how do you get your first customers? So it's a chicken and egg kind of a problem. So without ratings, reviews, without listing history, without the brand being known, how do you get your initial customers? So how we started with ads. The 2015-16, the sponsored product ads were just introduced on Amazon. Flipkart also had their product listing ads. So through the ads, you got the initial product page view. So these are on-platform ads. And then you'd see here, so there is the ads go to the product. Yeah, I'll answer that. A+ listing. So I'll answer that when we did in-house, when we outsourced, currently what we do, I'll cover that. So there are two kinds of ads. So one is the on-platform ads. So on-platform ads will give you direct product views, and there are off-platform ads that we do on Google, Facebook, etc. Again, off-platform ads become very critical in categories which are discovery-led category. So say, for example, if you are selling some sparkling water or something like that. Now, how many people go on Amazon and search for sparkling water? Not a lot of people do that. So these are discovery-led categories. So you need to spend on Instagram, Facebook, get people known about the product category, get people known about the brand. And what that does is that will result in when people want to purchase, they'll go on Amazon and search for your brand. So that will result in organic discovery. So from brand, you come to organic discovery. From ads, you get to product page views. From product page views, you get to sales. So more and more people visit your product page. Initial days, the conversion rates will be low, but obviously you will get some conversion. Conversion rate will never be zero for any category. So India is a huge enough market. So you will get some kind of sales. From that sales, you will build up your reviews and ratings. And as your reviews and ratings build up, as the listing history gets more and more pronounced and all, you also started getting discovered organically on generic keywords. So I'll give you the example of fans. So when we started, so our fan was a energy efficient ceiling fan. So when we started with ads, and we started ads only for specific keywords. The people who were looking for energy saving fan or remote control fan. So these are two key features that we had, which were differentiating features. So when people are searching for remote control fans or energy efficient fans, they came to the product page. From that product page, since what they were searching was in complete alignment with the product, that resulted in sales. Because they were happy with the product gave them an excellent customer experience, and we are right from day one, we're very, very focused on product. That gave us good number of ratings and reviews. Once the ratings and reviews started increasing, we also started spending on ads on generic keywords. So initially we were spending on keywords like energy efficient fan. Now we started spending on keywords like fan. Because now we had enough 100 reviews kind of a thing, we had reached that scale. That again gave us more product page views, that again gave us more sales, more ratings and reviews. Slowly and gradually, we started listing organically on generic keywords like ceiling fans, high-speed ceiling fans. And this is when the flywheel actually starts moving. When you start ranking organically, then you don't have any cost of sales. You don't need to spend on ads. So this organic discovery led to more product page views, more sales, more reviews and ratings. And if you understand how Amazon SEO works, unlike Google SEO or something, it's very difficult to game Amazon SEO. The thing that works most is the sales velocity. If you have good number of sales, you will rank on top. If you do not have sales, you will not be able to rank on top. So it's very difficult to get the flywheel moving, but once you get it moving, it becomes a very, very profitable channel for you because you don't need to spend on ads anymore. Then you start getting share from competitor. Soon we started spending on ads like Crompton fans. So if someone is searching for a Crompton fan, they'll come to Atomberg's page because Atomberg is already 4.5 star rated, we'll get conversions from there. That again increases my ratings and reviews. That again increases my overall organic discovery. All this while the spend on brand was also happening. The spend on brand, the spend on Google, Facebook, the spend on all other offline spaces was also happening. That was also resulting again in brand searches which were happening. So more and more people are coming and searching for Atomberg fans on Amazon, Atomberg fans on Flipkart. So that's when it leads to more organic discovery. It also gives Amazon the signal that this is a product that people are looking for. That means this should rank more and more higher organically. And then it further increases overall organic discovery. And then once it starts moving, initial days, the reliance on ads is very high. 70-80% of the sales come from ads. Today, hardly around 10% of our sales come from ads. 90% of the sales happen from organic discovery or from brand searches. And that's when the channel really becomes profitable for you. And you understand, right? You realize the flywheel now, how it works. Once the flywheel starts moving, it keeps on accelerating on its own. The reliance on ads keeps on decreasing. The reviews and ratings keep on increasing. Obviously, there are given few things which must be there. First of all, your ratings and reviews must be positive. If you have products which are 3-star rated, 3.5 star rated, obviously there is no question of scaling. You can't scale a poor product unless you are competing in the total price, pure price point led price conscious consumers. Say for example, if I sell a fan at 800 rupees, I don't care what my ratings or reviews are. I'll always have a segment of people who will come and purchase that 800 rupees fan. But if I sell a fan at 4,000 rupees, I definitely have to get my ratings and reviews in place. I need to ensure that my product experience is really delivering what I'm committing. So once that happens, the flywheel starts moving on its own. So yeah, I'll be happy to take any questions, queries related to this. But this is a framework which you should use to think on when it becomes profitable. I'll also cover the metrics to track on the different metrics that we track to ensure that the flywheel is moving in the right direction. Yeah, I think we have Divya first. I'll take Divya's question. Divya mentioned, how did you get people to write reviews? Yeah, so there are a couple of things. So one thing is Seller Central allows you to mail people. So from the Seller Central, you don't get the email ID directly, but you get a hashed email ID. So you can set up processes there. So after 7 days of delivery, you can definitely like send them a nudge saying if you are happy, ask them if you are happy with the product. Don't ask them to write reviews. If they have any problem, ask them what their problem is. Try and solve their problem. Reviews come automatically, and then mention why reviews are important for you. The second nudge that you can do is in your packaging, have inserts. So we have always had these reviewers inserts, a handwritten note that mentions why reviews are very important for an early stage brand. Now, a handwritten note is something that a major competitor will not be able to do. A Crompton or a Havells will not be able to do. But by virtue of our advantage of being small, we could do things that could not scale. And at an early stage is very, very important. So handwritten note saying this is how you review us, have a QR code. They scan the QR code, automatically you come to the product listing page, and make it easy for them to review, solve their problems if they're having any problems with the product, and then definitely the number of ratings and reviews will increase for the product. The second question is, what percentage of purchases should typically result in reviews? I think again that will depend from category to category. So I'll not have any percent. In our case, we target close to around 10%. How to get paid reviews done? I don't think Amazon allows you to do paid reviews at this point. There are some black hat ways which you can use. You can get people to purchase, your friends and family to purchase and then do it, but those are not usually scalable ways to do it. But what Amazon does in US, they have a program called Vine, wherein they have an official list of reviewers, and those reviewers, you can send the product free of cost, and then they write genuine reviews. But they haven't yet rolled it out in India yet. So in India, you don't have it, but hopefully they'll launch it in the near future. So as of now, you don't have anything to do paid reviews. You can reach out to Amazon reviewers individually, send them the product and get them to do it. but that's not a very, yeah, it's the Vine program. Yeah, VINE, Vine program in Amazon US. So wherein you can be, see, because it's a chicken and egg problem, right? So like without the initial number of ratings and reviews, your conversion rates are very low in the initial days. So if you could figure out a way to increase your reviews to 20, 30, 40 reviews before you launch, I think that solves a lot of the problem. But unfortunately, you don't have that in India as of now. So you don't have any legal ways to increase reviews. So yes, you can figure out ways like you ask your friends and family to purchase from Amazon and write a review. But other than that, you don't have a lot of things there.
And then also people have raised hands. If you want to call Ritika.
Yeah. I think there is Satyajit, Yash. Yeah, we can start with Satyajit probably.
Yeah, Satyajit.
Hi. So I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One was when you're selling high value or high priced products.
Yeah.
And Amazon being a competitive marketplace and being very price sensitive.
Yeah.
So any experience around that? Second was, does Launchpad help?
Yeah.
Third was, does opening more fulfillment centers help?
Yeah.
And then fourth, finally, how do you increase reviews? Again, given that your products are 3x, 4x priced as compared to your competitors.
Yeah.
Especially when you have competitors who have been funded and they're getting reviews. You know, they come in the past 6 months, 10 months, and they have thousands and thousands of reviews.
Yeah.
You've been selling for 4 years and you just have 400, 500 reviews.
Yeah.
So
fair
very
enough.
Experience.
Fair enough. So I'll start with fulfillment center. So that is very, very important. So I think that's the first point that I mentioned. If you cannot ensure 48-hour delivery to 80 to 90% of the pin codes, you will find it very difficult to scale. So that is the biggest impact that we have had on conversion rates. So your conversion rates will go up by 30%, 40% if you have more fulfillment centers. So if you're selling from Bombay and you are selling to someone in Guwahati, so that will take you 8 days, 10 days to reach. So consumers today don't wait for that. So unless your product is such that they are really into your product, they have tried your product previously and they're very sure they don't want to try any other brand. So unless it's that category, it's very difficult for anyone to get them to wait for more than 48 hours. So the biggest lever that you have to improve conversion rates is definitely to open more fulfillment centers. And I don't think it's a lot of a cost because these are all variable costs. So obviously you need a GST for that state, but other than that, there's not a lot of fixed cost which is involved in opening fulfillment centers. So there is no reason why you should not do it. The second question was Launchpad. Yes, we are also a part of Launchpad in 2017-18. So Launchpad at that point, they had just begun. So see, Launchpad, something like a Launchpad really helps you when they help you in discovery. If that page is highlighted on the Amazon homepage, more and more people come to the Launchpad page and they discover your product. So if Launchpad helps you in discovery, helps you in getting additional free traffic, then it will help you. When we did it in 2017-18, Launchpad was very new and we hardly got any incremental traffic for there. But having said that, I don't think the cost charged for Launchpad is also very high. So if the charges are not very high, again, you can decide to go ahead, try. It might work for your category. It might not work for your category. For us, it didn't help a lot when we did it in 2000. But then again, Launchpad was too new at that point.
Correct. So my third question was, if your products are very highly priced, as compared to your competitors, then how do you go about it?
So Satyajit, again, I'll come back to the fundamental selling point. So why will consumers buy your product? They'll buy your product because of certain reasons, right? So you will have certain USPs, which your competitor don't have. If you are selling the same product at 4x price, it is no-brainer that no one will purchase your product. But if you have pointers which consumers need, if you have USPs which consumers need, and your competitors don't have, then I think you will need to figure out what the right price is, whether it is 2x, whether it is 3x, whether it is 4x. That's a business problem. That's not an e-commerce problem. What is the price premium that a consumer would be ready to pay for a product like yours? So in our category, so when we were selling fans, our fans were 3x more expensive than a Crompton or a Bajaj or a Havells. But then there were clear USPs which some consumers could relate to in the initial days. And as the brand became more and more well-known, more and more consumers will relate to. So there is also that life cycle, right? So you all know that adoption life cycle. In the initial days when the brand is new, your brand will only be adopted by the early adopters and innovators. As you move further in that life cycle, the early majority will also start adopting your product. But having said that, if you have clear USPs, if you call out those USPs and those USPs are solving real consumer problems, even for a small segment of the people, you should not worry too much about pricing and all. So yes, there would definitely be a market for price sensitive brands. No two ways about it. 100% there will be. And that will going to be a big chunk of the market. 60-70% of the market would be that. But you still have 30-35% of the market. Even if you get say 40-50% of the premium market, you have 15% share in that. So in our case, same, I think in fans, we'll have around 70% share of the premium segment. So if you cannot compete on price, if your product proposition is such that you are not competing on price, you are competing on things like customer experience, product features, benefits, etc., then you cannot compete on price. Now, what price consumers will pay, that is something that you will have to figure out through multiple experiments. So what is the sweet spot that you have? And here, I think, again, you can do a lot of pricing experiments to figure out what is the sweet spot. What are the gross margin requirements that you have, and what are the variable costs that you have, and what is the margin that maximizes the overall profit amount for you.
Correct. And last one was just an observation.
Yeah.
We've been selling for 3-4 years. We are with around 500-700 reviews.
Yeah.
And then you see a lot of new brands coming in within a year's time having thousands of reviews. So are there any hacks? Are there any tricks? How is it?
Yeah. So I think reviews are again a function of your sales velocity. If someone is selling in huge numbers, they'll definitely have good number of reviews. So again, it's a function of sales velocity. So it's a function of sales velocity, and like from your end, you can do whatever I've mentioned, right? How to increase reviews, some cards, all these things, make it easy for them to review, follow up on Seller Central. So the nudges, make it easier for them, and tell them why it's important for you. I think we can be, as founders, we can be very, very honest with them, why reviews matter with them, and consumers really connect with that honesty, that vulnerability. So that should definitely help you in increasing it. So there are no hacks. In Amazon, it's very, very difficult. It's impossible to get fake reviews. So they'll get it removed in case. So now they have these verified purchase things as well. So there are some agencies who do it for FMCG brands and all, who use these methods which are not legal, but in the long run, they don't work. And we have not tried it ourselves. So I'll not be able to comment on those.
Okay.
Yeah, Yash, you could, yeah.
Arindam, first of all, you guys are doing a great job. Very exciting category, because I recently had a chance to read Keemat Rai Gupta's biography.
Yeah.
And then learning about Attenborough today, I can very much relate. So first question is, why D2C? Because electronic goods, of course, like consumer electronics, there is a niche for it, but something like fans, as you mentioned, right? So as opposed to traditional distributors, because of the margins that D2C also takes away, right? So in your category, why D2C? Like given the margins that Amazon takes away. And secondly, like a challenge that we personally face in health and personal care. So we are very medicinal, very holistic in nature.
Yeah.
So Amazon often, comes up with policies that, your product is not as per policy, and it is removed. They just remove the listing page. And even after they have received orders and for the same SKU. And even that is one reason, like FBA also becomes challenging, because you put up a good inventory in Amazon warehouse, and then they say, okay, this is not something that we want to sell because it violates XYZ policy. But before that, they're selling it. So, the policy mechanism is very, it keeps changing, and it's difficult to adapt to it, being in the category that we are in. So any advice on that? That these are just the two.
Fair enough. I think the first question, yes, is the same thing. So why? I think there are 40 people here. So why all of us decided to go D2C? The same reason Attenborough also decided to go D2C. It takes a hell lot of time and money to build distribution in a country like India. And e-com is booming even today. Even then it was just starting to take off. Today it's booming, of course. And there's definitely a set of consumers who are digital first, e-com first, and they don't mind to buy anything that can be bought online will be bought online in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's something that we had recognized long back. I think that was the reason. The second part, yes, as far as few categories like yours are concerned, yes, I faced this challenge from a few other categories as well when they reached out to me offline on how do you go about it. Yeah, it's a real problem. So I don't have a solution for it at this point. The only thing that you could do is you could possibly work closely with your category team, the category manager, build relationships there, have a good account manager who would be able to solve you, take you through that process, expedite solving it. But yeah, like there's not a lot that you could, from a strategic point of view, you'll not be able to do it. It's just that know the right people there, understand how it works. And if you possibly do it for 2-3 times, from the 4th time onwards, things will become smoother for you. The first time it might take you 1 month to get it reactivated. The next time you can reactivate it possibly within a week or so, if you understand how it works. I think that's a purely operational thing. I don't think, but yeah, that's a category that a lot of people face in health, wellness and all. So yeah.
Understood. Thank you. That does help, definitely. Thank you.
Gaurav, you want to ask?
Yes. So I have a couple of questions. One is, talking about customer experience, because you brought that up a couple of times.
Yeah.
On your own website, you have sort of touch points where you can, in some sense, control the customer experience.
Yeah.
Right. But on a marketplace on Amazon, say, for instance, you're an FBA.
Yeah.
For instance,
Yeah.
then most of that customer experience from delivery to ordering is in some sense very similar.
Yeah.
Right. So first question is, how do you differentiate customer experience on marketplaces like Amazon?
Yeah. So the first thing is Amazon gives a much better customer experience than any D2C delivery can give.
Correct.
So we don't have to worry about that. So in our case also, all the CX problems happen whenever the sales happen from our website. Some delays happen. So Amazon is absolutely exceptional. What they have built, not just Amazon, even Flipkart to a lot of extent, what they have built over the last 10 years, the operational expertise that they have built, hardly you face any challenges where they are delaying delivery and all. So that's very, very rare. Those occurrences will be much, much higher when you sell from your own website. The second part in customer experience is, as you mentioned, the information part. Like, are you able to give the right information? Are they choosing the right SKUs? That again comes down to your content. So in content, we have 3 things, right? So we have the A+ content. So wherein we can mention what the product is all about in a rich way. Then you have a brand store. So brand store acts like your mini website. So I don't know if you guys, some of you would have brand store, some of you might not have a brand store, but brand store acts like your mini website wherein you get, yes, obviously it's templatized. It's not like your own website where you can put anything and everything. It needs to go through approvals, but you can put a lot more information on your brand store about, negative customer experience happen because of 2 things. So one is they are buying something and the product is not delivering that. And second thing is they're buying the wrong SKU. So they have a bigger room and they're buying a small fan because that experience was not clear. Or I mentioned something which the product doesn't deliver. So I mentioned dust resistant. Consumers think it is anti-dust and then they purchase and they think there is dust accumulating. That results in a negative customer experience. So to ensure customer experience, so one thing is we need to ensure that whatever we're putting in the bullet points in the A+ content, the product actually delivers it. And second is use the A+ content, use the brand store to tell the story of your brand, to tell the story of your product in a much, much clearer way than what you would possibly do through your bullets and through your images, the normal images. So this too will ensure. As far as the after sales is concerned, I think that's not a concern. It might be a concern when you sell through smaller marketplaces like Paytm and all of this, because they also struggle. But on Amazon and Flipkart, I don't think that's a concern. The delivery and fulfillment experience, that's usually top notch.
Correct. And my second question is that, again, I haven't found a lot of information on this, but every now and then I see an influencer kind of talk about, this is my Amazon link to buy the product. And I think it's called the Amazon influencer program.
Affiliate program. Correct.
So if you can maybe just tell us, a little bit more about that and how one could leverage it. because I feel like that again, it brings in that aspect of social validation.
Yeah.
And plus, I think there is also financial incentive for the person who's doing the recommendation. I mean, could you just maybe tell us if you've used that and how we could?
So we definitely used it. So any major influencer will also be an Amazon affiliate. So what it means by being an Amazon affiliate is you have a specific link, and if someone clicks on that link and then they make a purchase, the person who shared the link gets a commission. So that commission, I think, varies from 6% to 8%. So all major blogs, etc., they'll also be Amazon affiliates. All influencers will also be Amazon affiliates. So that's a way to like attribute sales that an influencer generates to that influencer. The influencer also makes some money out of it. So if you're doing any kind of influencer marketing, yes, I would highly recommend that you also ask him to put an Amazon affiliate link. So all of them would be Amazon affiliate. Any decent influencer on Instagram, on YouTube, etc., all of them would be Amazon affiliates.
Okay. Does Amazon reach out to them, or do they just
this influencer? So this is a way of making money for the influencer also, no?
Okay.
So that's an additional income source for any influencer. Okay. So yes, if you're doing any kind of influencer marketing, you could definitely ask them to put your Amazon link.
Okay.
So it's a form of affiliate marketing wherein you get the sales from Amazon if someone clicks on that link, and they get a commission out of every sale that they make.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Ritika, you want to ask?
Yeah, hi. So I know this is specific to category and a brand, but in our experience, sponsored brand ads, we've seen lower ROAS in that.
Yeah.
So in your experience, have you still spent on that, or have you focused on the product? And then
sorry. Yeah, go on.
So the second question is, how do you tackle bad reviews with unrealistic expectations? So we are in skincare, right? So people expect like miraculous results after one use, and they after one use they write a bad review.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that problem?
Again, very category specific challenges. So for us, sponsored brands and sponsored products, both of them have worked well. So sponsored brands typically we use for keywords which are completely generic. Say, for example, if someone is searching for a completely generic ceiling fan, then I would have more chance of conversions if I get into my brand store. So sponsored brand, the landing page is the brand store, right? And sponsored product, the landing page is your product page, because then you click on the product. So I have higher chances of conversion if I get into the brand store, because it's for our price category, it's a fairly higher price point category. So the 4,000 rupees purchase, you need to get more information before making that purchase, and the chances of conversions are higher if you get into the brand store, communicate everything about the brand, show him the entire range of SKUs, range of products that you have. If it's a slightly more specific keyword search, say for example, if someone is looking for a remote control fan or something like that, wherein your product directly matches, then I think a sponsored product will also make more sense. But having said that, you need to do a lot of A/B tests, figure out which is giving you more ROAS, and try and spend more on ad formats where your ROAS is higher. It would depend from category to category. It would again depend from product to product, brand to brand. But what you should definitely do is you should definitely run those experiments and figure out on what is giving you a higher. There is no hard and fast rule here. The thumb rule that we use is higher funnel keywords where people are still at an evaluating stage. We use sponsored brands. A slightly lower funnel keywords, we use sponsored products. That's the framework that but again, it would depend from your category. The second part, unrealistic reviews, yes, they'll always exist. You can't do a lot about it. Till a year back, we could comment on reviews, but now Amazon has changed that. So now you can no longer comment on reviews. So you can't do much there. So what you can possibly do is in your Q&As and all, you can mention what the product will do, what the product will not do. And so again, the example that I gave for dust, right? So we had a thing called dust resistant because we use dust resistant paint. Somehow consumers took it, there will be no dust accumulation. And that resulted in a lot of negative reviews. But then we made the course correction and changed it to saying it is an easy to clean blade. Those insights will come by talking to consumers only. Like, what were you expecting? Why did you purchase? did anything trigger you saying ki this will give this results, so and so results? And if there is some expectation where there is slight mismatch in expectation and the product, I think we can always tone down those expectations. Again, that's a fine line. So we don't need to undersell our product, but again, we don't need to oversell what the product and the brand does as well.
Okay, thank you.
Arindam, there are other questions, but do you want to move on? Because I think we are at slide 1, and I think you might want to cover.
Yeah, I think we are covering a lot of the slides through the Q&As only. I'm fine with either way. So we could do this.
Whatever you want to run it as, because there are many questions. This is one of those first sessions where literally there's hands up.
Okay. So then what I'll do is I'll do a couple of more slides, and then we'll take more questions. Does that work? Hello.
Yes, that works. Jacqueline, you want to move to the next slide?
Yeah. So the first framework that I would definitely want you guys to remember is the flywheel framework. And unlike what a lot of people say, definitely a flywheel exists in marketplace, and you can build a moat around it if you get things right. And once it gets moving, things get easier and easier for you. The second framework, again, it's a very, very fundamental. All of us understand it. But whenever you think of sales, so there are two things, right? Two frameworks that all of us founders, we work on, right? So one is the top line, one is the bottom line. So instead of thinking top line, whenever you think of sales, think of two parameters. Is it a traffic problem or is it a conversion problem? So the moment you start thinking on those, the solution that come out will be. Here, move to the previous slide. And the second fundamental thing that all of us need to be aware of is the bottom line. So in bottom line, again, so we need to be very, very clear what our variable costs are. And from the gross margin, are we covering the variable costs? So variable costs, again, are the fulfillment cost, are the margins that we pay. And then we have this, like the ads and all the returns. So all of these are the four or five variable costs. So we need to keep a tab on our variable cost. So if I'm not profitable, that means my variable costs are higher than what my gross margin can afford. And if my sales are not moving, that means either there's a traffic problem or there is a conversion problem. So we'll first tackle the sales part. The profitability part we'll handle toward the end when we discuss about the metrics. You can move to the next one, Jacqueline. So again, very, very simple, complete no-brainer. To increase sales, you would either need to increase traffic to your page or you need to increase conversion rate. Yeah, I can move to the next one. So the levers to increase traffic. So in the levers, again, need to depend on where you are in that flywheel journey. Have you started moving the flywheel? Is it moving slowly or is it yet to start moving? So in the initial days, right, so your organic will be low. So you will definitely not rank on top in generic searches. Your brand searches will be limited because it's still not a well-known brand, because brand is directly a function of the platform spends that you do, the repeats, how many people are talking about your product on social, word of mouth, etc. And the third way to get discovered, to get organic traffic, is to get discovered on the category pages. So again, for newer launches, it's very difficult. It's not so easy to get discovered on the category page. Same for deal pages as well. So, and then you have the paid levers. The paid levers, obviously the off-platform paid levers I'm not talking about here. On the on-platform paid levers, you have your search ads and you have your display ads. So search ads, we would classify into three ways. So there is generic, there is competition, and there is a specific generic. So when I say specific generic, I mean keep attributes which your product fulfills directly. Say, for example, if you have a keto protein bar, so energy bar can be a generic keyword searches, and a keto energy bar will be a specific generic search. So your conversion rates will definitely be higher if you are selling a keto bar and you are bidding on searches which are linked to sugar-free, keto, or something like that. And then the last is, once you reach enough scale, you can also try and take share from competition. That is again very important once you reach certain scale, so that you can stop other brands from taking share from you, and or even stop other brands from moving their own flywheels. So or creating their, so you can kill the competition very, very easily at the very beginning if you start, like if you focus on their competition keywords as well. And then you have display ads. Display ads are two types of ads. So there is your custom intent, wherein you see the ads on your app homepage, the website homepage, and all of this. So those are usually CPM ads. Typically they cost more, and I would not suggest them at a very early stage. But the other one is a product display ad, which you should definitely look for. So these are ads which are shown on on some competitor SKUs. You can choose on which SKUs you want these ads to show. So this product display ads again is a very good way. If you have a similar kind of a brand which is also competing, you can show your ad on those listings. So on those listings, you would have two spaces just below the bullets. You will have a space to show those product display ads. So yes, primarily these are the levers to increase traffic. The organic levers in the long run, this will give you most number of traffic. For paid initial, yeah, you can go back. I'll tell you, Jacqueline, when to move. And then in the paid ones, you have the search ads, you have the display ads. You start with specific generic, you move to generic, then you move to competition. Display ads, you can start with product display, then you move to custom intent. For organic, yes, that will take its own time. But in the long run, yes, it's very, very important. And only then your overall marketplace operations will become profitable if you get a good chunk of your sales through organic traffic. So yeah, I can take questions, queries related to anything, any levers for increasing traffic. And I think if you previously had any question related to that, I think we can take those now.
So I think there's some hands raised, maybe.
Yeah, I think we could start with anyone. Yeah, one of you could just start.
So I had a question.
Yeah.
Correct. In terms of increasing traffic, I wanted to understand selling on your own store versus selling on somebody, a bigger seller in your category, like Cloudtail or like Appareo. So
no, that will not increase traffic. So Cloudtail or Appareo, what they do is that they solve for your operational efficiencies. So Cloudtail doesn't have its own store. You go to Cloudtail store and you discover what are the products that they're selling. Cloudtail might help you in better conversion. So I'll come to that towards the end. I think that was a question that few others had also raised, but that will not help you in generating additional traffic.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. I actually had two doubts specifically.
Yeah.
First was when you said that you were running ads on the marketplaces.
Yeah.
Right. So was the transaction still profitable at that point? Or were you thinking that, okay, in the long run, we might become profitable, but right now we'll just spend for getting those, getting to that scale where organic kicks in?
Yeah, see, our scale would not be the right to compare because see, that was in 2016, right? So at that point, hardly anyone was doing Amazon ads. But if you talk to anyone today, definitely it will not be profitable right from day one. So for sure it will not be, because your conversion rates will be lower. So you will be driving traffic. Driving traffic will depend on what your competitors are bidding. So your CPCs will be directly a function of what your competitors are bidding, how many competitors are there, what is your click-through rate, and then your conversions will decide whether your ads are profitable or not. In the initial days, when your ratings and reviews are not very high and all, your conversions will not be very profitable. So we'll definitely be losing money at a unit level in the initial days. In case you want to scale fast, obviously you could decide that I'll bid only on the very profitable keywords, which is directly related to what my brand is selling. Or I will do whatever organically sales happen, I'll be happy with only that, and I'll do some off-platform spends. Those are strategic calls that you can take, but if you want to scale quickly at a unit level, definitely it will not be profitable in today's circumstance, because I know how the CPCs have gone up in the last 5 years.
Correct. So does that not make more sense to rather just do spends off platform and to get them on your own website and complete that, because that there is possibility that you might still be transactionally profitable over there?
Yeah, see, if that's a channel that you have figured out, if that is giving you unit economics. So the fundamental of like performance marketing or any growth marketing is once you figure out a profitable channel, right? Till the time you exhaust it, you do it. So if you figure out that that channel is profitable, wherein you are acquiring someone on Instagram, getting them to your website and getting them to purchase, if that is making sense at a unit economics level, obviously you do that. And then let Amazon grow slowly on its own. But in most cases, I don't think that will be profitable, because there you are recruiting customers of Instagram. On Amazon, people are already there with a high purchase intent. So if that is more profitable for you, yes, for sure. And that's what we do currently. So even today, our ad spends are hardly, like of all our overall ad spends, hardly we do 5 to 10% on the marketplaces. Rest of it definitely is off platform, because now we've reached that scale where because this traffic is the easiest traffic, right? So whenever someone starts, so they'll focus on the complete bottom funnel. There's a high purchase intent. So this will always be very, very expensive traffic to acquire. So the more bottom funnel traffic you acquire, the more expensive it will be. That's the fundamental of growth marketing. The higher the funnel you acquire them, you get them engaged and get them to purchase, your cost will be lower. So
Got it.
Yeah, so that's a strategic call that you need to make. And if you have figured out one channel, I would say obviously, if you have figured out Flipkart is more profitable for you and you are able to scale up. So it's a function of scalability and profitability. So usually the challenge is to try and scale profitably. At certain scale, you will definitely find कि ये profitable है. You will do 10 orders, you will find it is profitable. But can it be profitable when you want to scale from 10 to 100? If it is still profitable, do it. Will it be profitable if you scale from 100 to 1000? If it is profitable, do it.
Got it. Makes sense.
So that's the framework that you should use to think.
Correct. Also, second question is a little bit on the pricing end of it.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say if you are selling on both the marketplaces and on your website, right? And let's say if we are trying to do ads on the marketplace also, or even in those senses, how do you look at pricing for both? Do you keep the same pricing at both the places, or how do you keep pricing?
See, in our case, I'll tell you what we did and why we did. In our case, we have always kept the price same everywhere, because I believe that's the best customer experience that a customer can get. He's going to the retail shop, he's going to Amazon, he's going to Flipkart, he's going to Attenborough website. He knows that he is not being cheated. By being cheated, it means it's not that he'll find this cheaper somewhere else. So that's the call that we had taken. We had kept the price same everywhere, although we realized that, and our cost of fulfillment was also similar. So if you do it from your website as well, but if you figure out that your website operations are very much profitable compared to your Amazon operation, provided you do the attribution of spends right, then you can decide to have a cheaper price on your website. That's also a strategy that a lot of people do. So you need to figure out which channel is more profitable for you. If the profitability is similar, then you can take those calls. But from a customer experience point of view, it is best if you can maintain a uniform price everywhere.
Correct. No, so uniform price is of course the best way, but for something like marketplaces, right, wherein one of the majority factors always will be pricing. Right. Like even if you're not trying to compete on it, but there will still be a huge factor. Wherein let's say you have figured out that probably if I sell at 200 rupees less, I'll sell far more. Like you did a test, you realize that. Then what do you suggest doing in that chance?
See, then ideally you should reduce it 200 rupees everywhere, because or else you would not get any sales from your website. Even if you get sales, you will get returns, you will get unhappy customers when they figure out that the same product is selling at a lower price on a different platform. So say for example, Flipkart is always a price sensitive platform. So it doesn't mean that you will sell cheaper on Flipkart, the same product. So, or you have a separate SKU. We have a SKU which sells exclusively on Flipkart. It's a slightly degraded version of what you usually sell. And that's how you can figure out. But the same product at different prices, I think that's not a very good customer experience.
Got it. So it's better to actually have a different SKUs.
Different SKUs. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one point over here, Dharmeen, for your reference, that something that we tried doing and worked for us was that pricing is one bit that you might want to keep common across, like it was mentioned. But what you could do is something that we do at Dimension is we give away something, we bundle it with a small giveaway item wherein the price still remains the same, but you get sort of a good gratification for purchasing directly from the website.
Or you
Got
could do a
it.
lot
Got
of
it.
things.
That's
In
a
our
good
case, we give additional warranty, additional service, something like that. So it
Makes
depends
sense.
from category to category.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, in terms of driving traffic, which you were talking about,
Yeah.
so is it advisable to drive traffic to your Amazon page via Facebook ads or like your Amazon product? Or that's something you shouldn't do? Or like even Nike?
Again, so there'll be different opinions on it. We did not do this because, again, look at it from a consumer point of view, right? When you are recruiting someone from Facebook, right? Or so they are not in that purchase journey. So you'd want them to know more about your brand and the product. And I would like to think that your website would definitely tell your brand story, your product story in a much better way than Amazon does. If you are using Facebook ads for remarketing, then you could do it you could redirect them to like Amazon or platform, because then you are basically telling them that you already know about the brand, you have already spent time in my website, you know everything. Now I want you to purchase. I'm just reminding you to purchase. So it again depends on what your intent is. If your intent is for them to know more about the product, know more about the brand, and then not make an immediate purchase right there, right then I think it makes all the more sense to drive to your website. If you want immediate purchase, if you think that the consumer already knows about your brand and product, then you can drive them to that. So a company like HUL or Marico, they would definitely drive a lot of traffic directly to Amazon or a Swiggy or a Grofar or a Big Basket, because you don't need to come to a HUL website to know more about the product. You already know about the product. But for brands like you and me, I think it makes more sense to drive traffic to the website and then let consumers make the choice whether. So you can also do a link to your Amazon page from your website. So after your website, if a consumer wants to purchase from Amazon, they can click on that link and purchase from Amazon. You can make it easier for them in case that's a strategic priority for you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, we have been on Amazon for almost 3.5, 4 years, and Amazon advertisement is a very important part of getting sales, traffic, and everything. So we have been spending a lot of amount on AMS, and these tools are so complicated. Amazon Reports, Amazon Pi account, that we have not been able to manage or let's say recruit an in-house team who could manage our account in a way which keeps our ACOS consistent, let's say. So it has always been increasing, and that's one of the biggest challenges of what we have faced on selling on Amazon via AMS, obviously advertisement. Yeah. So what do you recommend, like for a startup like us in the initial days? Should we like maintain an in-house team, train them on all these tools and all, or should we go to a third-party service provider?
So rather, again, increasing ACOS has two parts to it, right? So either it's a CPC increase, or your conversion rates have gone down, or your conversion rates have not improved. So if it is CPC increase, again, it's a fundamental of how search marketing works. So if it is because of competition, you will not be able to do anything. If there are 5 more competitors bidding on the same keywords, your CPCs will go up. There is not a lot that you will be able to do there. But you could figure out, if you deep dive into it, you could figure out which are the keywords which are profitable for you. It's not that all keywords can be negative, can be unprofitable for you. If you look at the search terms report, you can figure out which are the keywords that are profitable for you, which are the phrases that are profitable for you. So again, I'll not get into details there. That is how search marketing works. Yeah. The second part, as you have mentioned, of getting a team in-house, the first thing is, do you have an expert in-house? Like if you do not have an expert in-house, what I would suggest is work with an agency for some time, understand the basics. Like work closely with an agency, whatever, like either the founder or someone who's heading growth or marketing, they should work very closely with the agency for a period of 1.5 years. Understand the fundamentals, understand what to look for, and only then you would be able to manage a team in-house. Because you will not be able to manage a junior team in-house if you do not have someone senior who understands things end to end. So if you do not have that, I would suggest you would work with an agency, you figure out, and I think there would be a lot of agencies who do Amazon ads, work closely with them for a year, ask the fundamental questions, ask the same question that your investors ask you, and then figure out what kind of answers you get, whether they're the right partners and all, and then once you are confident of your knowledge, or whoever is heading marketing is confident of their understanding about AMS, their understanding about search and all of this, then you can definitely think about moving things in-house.
I have another question. You said Amazon formed a very important part of your sales and growth, I believe, right now also, and in the initial days as well.
Yeah.
So how soon was it when you decided to expand from Amazon, let's say, and focused on your website and offline, only channel mode? So when was that, let's say, moving point? What was that?
Yeah. So we actually started with our own website. So, so that was, and then 2016 odd, we decided to move to, see, at the end of the day, right, you need to go where your consumer is. So offline is a no-brainer for a category like us, and for a lot of categories here. Out of the 40 people that we have, offline will contribute to 80 to 90% of the sales. So if you really want to scale, so I'm talking about proper scale, if you really want to get to scale to 200, 300, 500 crores or more than that scale, you definitely need to think of offline at some point. At what point, that would depend on two things. One is we need to understand that offline is a long game. So we moved offline when we are very sure that we'll be able to invest in this for the next 5 years. Offline will not give you immediate results. You will need to build distribution. You will need teams for every city, and every city will be unprofitable for 2.5 years because you will not reach that critical scale. But you will need manpower, you will need distributor, all of these things you will need. So we decided to move offline in 2018 when we had raised our first round, when we were very confident we will be able to close our Series A in the next 6-7 months. That's when we decided we need to move offline, because or else it will continue bleeding money for you. And you will not be able to run a lean and mean operations once you start to move offline. And yeah, Amazon was a no-brainer because like there was no additional cost involved to sell on Amazon. So these are all variable cost. And like, as long as things are variable cost, you can make the experiments. But when you think of offline and all, these are fixed costs. You need to invest in team, you need to invest in infra, you need warehouses in those places. So these are fixed costs. So before making any fixed cost decision, I think it's always good to like have that confidence for the next 2-3 years.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, really helps. Thanks.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of questions around Cloudtail. I'll probably take that. I think there's a lot of similar questions. So the first thing you need to understand is, why do you need Cloudtail? So Cloudtail does two things. So one is, if you do not have replication, and say for example, you have replication in only 4 warehouses in India, Cloudtail will have replication in 50 warehouses. And they will have warehouse in each and every city in India. So that ensures that your time to delivery is very low. If you are having operational issues in setting up warehouses, managing FBA operations, FBA is also not easy. It is operationally intensive. You take appointments, only your operations person will know how operationally intensive is FBA. Like before sale events and all, whole night you'd be talking with truck drivers saying whether your inwarding is happening, unloading is happening, and all of this. So what Cloudtail does is, after you reach a certain scale, if you do not want this operational headache, Cloudtail solves for that. That is the one and only thing that Cloudtail does. The second thing is, Cloudtail has also built a reputation amongst a good segment of tier 1 audience, saying if the seller is Cloudtail, I can trust it more. They'll deliver on time. It's owned by Amazon. So more and more people are aware about it. But other than that, Cloudtail doesn't have any major advantage of going. So we went with Cloudtail. Cloudtail at first approached us in 2018. We didn't go at that point because we didn't feel the need. 2019 also we didn't go. To early 2020 was when we decided to go with Cloudtail, because our operations had reached a certain scale where we are finding it very, very difficult to manage all of this. Yeah, cross-docking, all of these things. So sending some stock to Bangalore warehouse, some to Delhi warehouse, which warehouse to send how much stock. Cloudtail has those prediction mechanisms as well in a very, very nice manner. So your operational efficiency improves. Now the demerits of Cloudtail, again, someone has mentioned, that is the price match. So that is the price match which they do. And second thing is, if you do not have a right agreement and the right bargaining power with them, they'll sell at whatever price they feel like. And it's a vicious cycle that people follow, and which I'll tell you what we did, how we did it differently with Cloudtail. So right from day one, we are very clear with Cloudtail that we will not allow any discounting. So like any discounting that happens will happen from Atomberg's end. So any discounting that happens needs to be pre-aligned with Atomberg, but the billing price will be at a price keeping in mind that there is no discounting. So there will be no discount on the billing price. Any discounting that happens with the approval of Atomberg, there will be credit notes raised by Cloudtail, which will again honor. So this ensures that your price consistency is maintained. And on their own whims and fancies, Cloudtail is not able to reduce prices. Now, if you do not do it, then every time there's an event, they'll come back to you and say, Ki, I need a 2% additional discount. And I'm going to use it basis what I want. And they'll start discounting it. Automatically your market operating price comes down by 2%. Because as an organization, Cloudtail's intent is also to maximize revenue. And they're also not very profit focused. So they are okay with 1% net profit. And the moment that happens, then again, next year they'll come saying, Ki, last year this had happened. I need more additional 2% discount this time. I need additional turnover discount. So it's a very vicious cycle which you should definitely avoid. If anyone is going with Cloudtail, I would suggest you work on a basis wherein you agree the selling price, and basis the selling price, you agree on their margins, and basis that you calculate your transfer price. And you clearly mention that any discounting that happens, for those discounting will have additional credit notes. That ensure that you maintain a lot of control over your pricing. I hope that answers the Cloudtail related. Any Cloudtail related questions, we can take those. Anyone who's thinking to approach Cloudtail, I think. And the second question was who approach? I think, yeah, it's Cloudtail who approaches the brand. Yeah, Aditya, you want to ask something?
Yeah, so Arindam, I had a question. So you are also on Cloudtail, but you're also selling directly.
Yeah.
So we are selling through Cloudtail because most of our products are volumetric.
Yeah.
So in terms of the cost of fulfillment, also Cloudtail is a little cheaper for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that way Sellaflex and all doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so when do you choose to sell directly and when do you choose to sell through Cloudtail? Like which SKUs?
Yeah. So for all the SKUs, see, Cloudtail will only pick up the high volume SKUs, the top 80-85%. So we would have close to around 60 SKUs. So Cloudtail will pick up only the top 20, which will generate 80-85% SKUs. So the remaining ones will sell to Seller Central. The other advantage of Seller Central is if something goes wrong with Cloudtail at any point of time, you are not dependent on them. See, this Diwali, this happened that Cloudtail's warehouses got stuck because they had estimated that they'll sell more. They had taken stock from every brand and they were not able to liquidate it. So now their warehouses were clogged. So if you're dependent on Cloudtail, then you are not able to. But since we had FBA warehouses all over India, so we could easily shift the volume from Cloudtail to Seller Central. So it's just a fallback option. And also, if you have a good Seller Central functioning account, your bargaining power always remains with Cloudtail. So tomorrow, Cloudtail cannot come and hand twist you saying, Ki, I need 2% additional margin. If I do not do it, I'll not sell. So it's always advisable to maintain the Seller Central operations. You can obviously choose at what scale you want to maintain, what SKUs you want to share, but it's always advisable to maintain the Seller Central account. That's what I would suggest.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Cloudtail shutting down. I think Ankit has mentioned something. Yeah, I don't think the entity might shut down. The entity might change name, but Amazon will definitely have this, like one of the entities to run operations for itself. It's just that the joint venture between Catamaran and like Amazon is ending. So someone else might buy the share of Catamaran or something like that. That's what I heard from the team. Yeah. So you can move to the next slide and then I'll take the few other questions, the remaining questions. Yeah, you can go back to the previous slide, Jacqueline. The next one. Yeah. Right. So again, we already discussed this through the questions. What are the levers that you have to improve conversions? So listing quality, definitely. So in listing quality, what I would say is do a lot of A/B testing. There is no one right answer. Videos work for you. What kind of videos work for you? What kind of images work for you? there is no right answer that anyone can give you. What works for Atomberg will definitely not work for you or your category, or even what works for a brand in your category might not work for you. So both on Amazon and Flipkart, you can track SKU level conversions. So on Amazon, you can track at a GV's level, you don't get absolute numbers. On Flipkart, you get absolute numbers. So you can track which SKUs are doing well. Have very clear log of your experiments, log your experiments in a very clear way. And then you understand which experiments are working, which experiments are not working. Operations, very, very important. If you are not replicated, your conversion rates will be low. This again, I keep saying ki, as marketeers, as founders, we focus a lot on the front end things. How the operations look, how the listing looks like, how the ads are performing. But the most important thing on Amazon or Flipkart is to ensure that 48-hour delivery across 80 to 90% of your pin codes. The third is reviews and rating, no brainer. As your reviews and ratings improve, negative review decrease, more number of positive reviews, your conversion rates go up. It's almost doubled. If from a 3.5 to a 4.5, it's almost double. Again, this is something that we have seen across SKUs. Start tracking this on a SKU level. If you start tracking this on a SKU level, you'll be able to figure out for yourself on what the numbers actually are for your category, for your brand. Brand store, again, definitely it helps you to tell you the story of your brand in a much, much cleaner way, and definitely helps in conversion. Yes, lastly, deals and discounts, no brainer, but again, don't overdo it for deals and discounts. It's very, very important that we should not overdo this, because the moment we overdo deals and discounts, that becomes the reference price. And then if you want more sales, you need to reduce it again further. And again, it's a vicious cycle. So ideally, like any major sale events and all, you should definitely be a part of those lightning deals, deal of the day, whatever Great Indian, whatever deals. I think they come up with different names every time. Whatever names they come up with, be a part of that. I think sometimes they also charge a small amount of 10,000 rupees to be a part of those deals. But I think that's worth it to be a part of those deals in the major sale events whenever Amazon is like looking at those marquee events like a Great Indian Sale or something like that. Yeah, we can take a few questions related to those levers. So I have pointers related to those levers, but I think I have more or less covered those in the Q&A itself. So we can take questions related to conversion, anything related to conversion. Yeah, Manisha, you want to ask something?
Yeah, hi. Arindam, I want to know, like what you're saying, I think we're using most of the stuff you've told us, from brand store to A+ content and to other things.
Yeah.
But at the moment, our average listing sales is 50K and it's just stagnant and it's just not increasing, the sales volume.
Yeah.
So, I mean, any heads up on that?
So it'll be very difficult for me to comment on a business specific.
We are basically a personal care, like a personal care brand, like hand wash and hand sanitizer. And we are doing everything, like all those pointers you've mentioned. So we're doing everything.
So what is the process? Is your traffic not increasing or your conversion rates not improving?
The traffic is not increasing.
So again, to increase traffic, you are using the lever of ads.
We are using the lever of ads, from ACOS to video marketing to even the QR code. You said thank you note and all the reviews.
Yeah, so those are to increase reviews. So to improve traffic, right? You need to, I think the lever that you have in your control is get more and more people through your ads, be it off-platform ads or your on-platform ads. And to start off, yes, things might not be profitable in the very beginning. So in the initial days, I think ads are the only lever that you have to improve traffic. The other things would be to get on the deals page. If you run regular deals and all,
we are there on the deals page. We are there, like we try to give the maximum discount as possible. For me, I'm running.
So again, see, discount will not give you traffic. Discount will improve your conversion rate. So that's what I'm saying. You need to think if it's a traffic problem, right? So the traffic problem can be solved by traffic solution. Traffic solution in the initial days is only ads. So for Amazon, I don't think there are any, or the other traffic solution is a very slow solution. More and more people buy your product, they love your product, they talk about your product to their friends come back and search for your product on Amazon. But if we want quick results, the only solution is ads. You have to figure out how to get your ads right. Like like how can you scale your ads further? I think that's the only solution. All of these are conversion parameters: listing quality, reviews, brand score.
Yeah, like, you know, even after ACOS, I've seen even if I raise the ACOS and all, the conversion rate doesn't increase accordingly in those proportions a lot of times.
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned. So once you'd solve the traffic problem with your ads, and then the conversion rate problems you'll solve through these 5 parameters. Through your listing quality, you do a lot of A/B testing. You figure out your operations. If it's you figure out your reviews ratings, and you figure out the right brand store and all. And see, at the end of the day, we also need to realize what the product market fit is. So see, at the end of the day, these are all growth levers. Growth only works when there is a product market fit, and product market fit can only be solved by product market fit. Matlab, whatever growth you want to do, you never be able to solve a product market price fit through growth or through traffic or through conversion optimization. So if your numbers are not increasing, then figure out if you need to do some tweak in your product, some tweak in your pricing, reduce the pricing by 20%, bring in a couple of additional things which consumers might want. Go back to the value proposition that your product has, and talk to people offline, talk to people in retail stores if there's a product market fit there. But if there is not a product market fit in any channel, then you need to figure out first and foremost, you need to fit whether there is a product market fit, whether consumers will be ready to pay this price for your product and for what they are getting in return. So once that is solved,
yeah, it's a very economical product, but I believe the other customers, you know, the other competitors are coming in with a lower quality of product.
Yeah.
Just example, like 5-liter hand wash can. So there are people coming in with a lower quality of product, because then I've ordered it also and I've seen it.
Yeah.
You know, so, and then I cannot go lower than that cost.
Yeah.
At the moment, we are like the lowest pricing as it is on Amazon. We've even got the bestsellers and all those bestseller tags you get because of the volume. It's been there, but it's just stagnant.
Then possibly you need to look at what your market share is on Amazon. So have you already reached the ceiling on Amazon? If you're selling, you're already the bestseller. So it might be that you have already reached that ceiling on Amazon. You might need to look at a few other channels.
But it goes on and off. It goes on and off. You go Amazon bestseller for a while and then you go off. So you don't want to go off that category.
Yeah. So see, you need to figure out if you're already there, what kind of market share you'd have, and is there a scope to increase the market share further? If you think that you have already reached a ceiling, then focus on a few other channels that you might have. But yeah, I think that's there. And if you think that lowering pricing is never a solution, so lowering pricing is never a solution for any problem.
Yeah,
that's
right.
something that you should definitely not do.
Thank you.
I had a question, but that's not specific to conversion. It's more specific on particularly understanding repeat behavior on Amazon. So essentially, you know, you guys also operate in a category where a repeat purchase is not likely to happen probably very soon, right? So how do you take care of, like, what is essentially the way to go forward in that case, right? How do you induce repeat purchases or even track repeat purchases on Amazon particularly?
So in our category, as you rightly mentioned, right? So there are no repeats. So
okay,
if you buy a fan, you don't buy a fan again for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So we don't track repeats. And if you want to track repeats on Amazon, I think on Pi there is there is a parameter on Amazon Pi. I don't know if all of you are using Amazon Pi, wherein you get some idea about how many people are coming back. So for a lot of FMCG category, for a lot of CPG products, I think that will make more sense. From Pi, you will get a directional data of what percentage of your sales are happening through repeats. But in general, there are no other ways to track it. But Amazon Pi is a very good tool. If anyone of you is not using it or not having access to it, you definitely have that. I think you will get good understanding of your consumer behavior through that.
Got it. So like no pointers there in terms of how can you actually induce or increase repeats if need. Like,
overall, to increase repeats, I think, again, the first and foremost is the consumer experience. So if you're able to give them a very delightful experience, there is definitely they'll come back again. Second is if you can get the consumer data, like if you have their email IDs, phone numbers, you can have your CRM in place. So in our case, what we did was we had this warranty registration thing called warranty registration, wherein consumers come, even if they purchase on Amazon, they come to Atomberg website and register their warranty with their email ID, phone number, etc. So that gives me the consumer details. So now once I have the consumer details, after a year or so, I can ask them, if you purchase one fan, so now you might want to think of change. So give the nudges basis your CRM. Once you have the consumer data, I think these are 2-3 things. And to understand how well your repeats are doing, I think yes, Pi is a very good tool to understand how well your repeats are doing.
Got it. Thank you. That was all I wanted to ask.
Yeah, hi Anandam, it's Aditya again.
Yeah.
So, are you on premium A+ content, the premium A+ which has come out recently?
Yeah, we have a couple of SKUs there. Hello.
Okay. And yeah, I heard that. So, is that working out well, or do you think that that's a very high barrier not to look out?
Too early to comment, but what I would say, right? So it again depends on the category. I'll come back to that. So in our category also, and I think a lot of other categories, most of the purchases will happen from app. So now if you look at the Amazon app interface, right, when you go to your product also, you see how it's structured, right? A+ content comes way below. So how much they influence in sales from app, that's a thing to question for your category. You can probably talk to your category manager and see. In our category, 90% of the people don't even look at A+ content. So what becomes more important for a category where most of the purchases happen through app is a 7-8 images that you get at the very beginning. So those images are very important, because what happens is people start scrolling one by one. That's how the purchase happens. If you click on a SKU and then you have 7-8 images, you scroll through the images. So use those images to not just show the product, not just show the images of the product, but also communicate the key USPs of the product through bullet points, through different supers and all of this. So I think that's also one of the things that depends category to category, but that's something that what we have been doing. Our focus is much more on the listing images, the 7-8 images that you get, than compared to the A+ listing, because A+ listing only 10% of your audience is going.
Got it. Thank you.
When you do A/B testing, how many days, how long do you wait for you to assume your data is reliable?
See, again, it depends on what's the traffic that you are generating, right? If the SKU is generating good traffic, I think 15 days is good enough. If a SKU is not generating traffic, so it's a statistics question, right? What is statistically significant? So you need to figure out what is statistically significant basis your historical data and all of this. So it depends on the SKU traffic, I believe. If you have a SKU which is generating good traffic, I think 15 days is more than enough to give you conclusive data. And if a SKU is not generating enough traffic, I think you need to keep it on for a month to understand whether you're getting the right data or not.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, Bhanu.
Yeah, hello. Hi. Hello, Arindam.
Yeah.
Thank you for the great session. So we have talked about Amazon and Flipkart, but for a brand like us who are in the FMCG sector, I would like to know more from you if you can throw some light on other online grocery platform marketplaces like Big Basket and Grofers and Milk Basket. So how can a small startup who are not more than a year old can leverage those platforms? Because we are already onboarded on Super Daily and Big Basket. We have started doing some ads since last 1 month. But there's still a long way to go. So just wanted to understand more if you can throw some light on that.
So Bhanu, what I'll do is, I don't have experience selling in Big Basket or Grofers.
Right.
So I'll not be able to give you the specifics. This is what you should do in Big Basket or this is what you should do in Grofers. But what I would give you, I can give you some parallels from, say, a Tata Click or a smaller platforms on the category that we are in. So in most of the smaller platforms, right, how they differ from the bigger platforms is the bigger platforms are very process oriented. So if you want to list on top, you need sales, you need reviews, you need all of this. Only then your organic listing comes up. In our experience, what we have seen is a lot of smaller platforms, right? So they are relationship driven. So if you can build a good relationship with your category manager, and it works more like a modern trade, how modern trade works. So if you are able to build good relationship with a Big Bazaar or a Reliance or a Chroma, you get good places, you align on overall budget. This is what I'm going to spend. You tell me how to spend. So it's not a self-service model. So a lot of this early, so I'll give you the example of Tata Click or a Paytm or even say a Cred. So these are very relationship driven in the initial days. So these are not very process driven. Like Amazon, Flipkart is very, very process driven. Amazon 100%, Flipkart is 60-70%. So what I would suggest you is build very good relationship, have a good key account manager. So someone who, or I think you should do it in the initial days, or the founding someone from the founding team. Build very strong relationship with the person who's handling your category at BrickBasket or at Grofers. So it's a complete clear sales role. It's not an e-com role, it's a sales role. Build the relationship, figure out what are the levers that you could pull. These are the marketing investments. Ask him what are the marketing investments you could do. And then, but the takeaway is that these are not very structured platforms. So it will be platform to platform, and this will be very, very person specific. If you are able to have a strong relationship with their team, and if they are able to bet on your brand, saying that this is a brand that will grow with me, and if they are confident, so it's just like how we work with retailers. In a retail counter, you are not able to influence sales, right? The retailer is the god. So if you're able to have good relationship with the retailer, and obviously if you have a good product, you can figure out joint marketing activities, what can be done, drive some traffic there, generate some goodwill from them, and then figure out how you can list on top on those categories, get more visibility there.
Right. Yeah, that answers the question. That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, Jasmine, you want to...
Yeah, hi, Arindam. I have two questions. One is there a way to retarget customers on Amazon? That is question number one. Question number two is with regard to, I mean, like you said, when you initially launched, you're obviously operating in a very large category like ceiling fans. Right?
Yeah.
Similarly, let's say we launch some value-added products in a category like dry fruits.
Yeah.
Huge when it comes to Amazon. Insanely competitive, right?
Yeah.
There's like a price war and everything. So what value-added products, and they're just not like vanilla sort of offerings, but we're essentially operating in a category that's insanely large and competitive, and people are obviously spending a lot of money there.
Yeah.
So what would be your suggestion in terms of the strategy to get a foot in the door there and sort of scale up?
Yeah.
And obviously these are guys who have massive reviews.
Yeah. Got it. I think the first question is there a way to retarget? Yes, there is a way to retarget. Through display ads, you can retarget people who would have viewed your product on Amazon, not just your product, even anyone who's looking for dry fruits, you can retarget them on the Amazon platform alone. So you would see, if you go through an Amazon app, right, you would find a couple of ads there. So these are display ads. But then these display ads usually are expensive. So they are on a CPM basis. They're on a fixed buy, saying you need to spend so much amount, only then you'll be able to do it. Unlike product listing ads or sponsored product ads, wherein you can start with very small budgets. But once you have that budget, yes, you can retarget not just people who are purchasing your product, but also people who are looking for category level product. So that can be done through the display ads.
Okay, I think Amazon got in touch saying that you need to spend at least $1.5 lakh a month.
Yeah. You need to spend some amount there. Yeah, they would not do it for a.
That's what you would recommend for scale?
Yeah, if you are already doing some scale, if it fits your PNL, yeah, it works. Display ads work.
Okay.
So again, it's a function of where you are at your PNL.
Understood.
The second point, yes. So that's the fundamental question, right? How do you get the foot in the door and all? So again, come back to that flywheel. That's the fundamental. There is nothing additional there. If you have a differentiated product, call out the differentiated product, call it out off platform, get people to come to the Amazon platform, purchase your product. Your reviews will slowly and gradually go up. Then slowly and gradually get people to search for those keywords, which, say, for example, tell me what are the key features of your premium dry fruits?
So let's say
how is it different?
Dry fruit category is large. You've got your badam, pista, kaju, everything, right?
Yeah.
We're doing products like trail mixes, which are more specific, more value added. We're doing blended products of nuts and seeds and berries.
Yeah.
So and then we position them a certain way where it.
Yeah.
So so you got a fitness
Yeah. So you will slowly and gradually, I think you will start. So it will take time. There's no two ways about it. So
we're actually seeing very, very good traction on these products. What's happened because of the category is large? What's
very
expensive to sort of keep.
And you don't need to spend also organically. Also, you'll keep on growing. It's not that you will not grow organically. So you'll keep on growing. So that's the benefit of operating in a big and well-established category. So organically also, you will keep on growing. The second thing is you could also look at a few discovery-led platforms for any value-added product. Like discovery-led platforms also work well. Say, for example, something like a Cred would work really well for you in terms of getting people to discover the brand. Because in a search-based category, yes, when you search for dry fruits, obviously the cheaper ones will come on first because they'll have thousands and thousands of reviews and all, and they'll have the listing history. So you can start off with discovery-led platforms, get some traction there, and Amazon also keep on growing organically. As and when you have the budgets, as and when you have the money, pump in that money on Amazon ads, get it to scale up and get that flywheel moving. I think that would be the generic answer that I would give. But yes, you'll have to do those experiments and figure out.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Sachin, you want to ask something?
Yeah, hi. So 2 questions. One is regarding FBA model.
Yeah.
So on Amazon, so we need to deliver, like you said, all orders to our customers within 2 days, like 48 hours.
Yeah.
So we are there on Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, and Kolkata.
Yeah.
And we are stocked on more places in India, but most of the fulfillment happen through the 4 metro cities only right now.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of stocks that keep keep on piling up over there.
Yeah.
So would you suggest as in we should go into only these 4 places, or there are some more places that we should explore?
No, I think these 4 places should be good enough. I think so. When we started, it's not. See, the problem with this is you also have to predict demand for all of the zones, and that is not easy to do. For someone like Cloudtail, because they have tons and tons of historical data and demand models plugged in, they might be able to do it. But for you and me to predict demand, saying from Assam, what will be the demand from Assam, it's very difficult to predict the demand. So I think the 4 metros should be good enough to, I think that
even we tried that to predict for a fair amount, but we also expanded to Bhopal. So what happened is that for an ASIN, for a particular ASIN, most of the fulfillment is happening for, even it is coming from a nearest location to Bhopal, it is happening from these 4 places only. So once the ASIN gets over, or so we don't let that happen, like we don't let the stockouts to happen. But I think for a couple of products ASIN which we wanted to remove from an FBA, so what we observed that once that went over in the 4 warehouses, then it was going fulfilled from that warehouse which is in Bhopal. So this issue we felt.
I think that's an operational issue, but yes, like I think 4 warehouses are more than enough for you to serve the entire country. So I think,
second question is regarding Flipkart. Any do's and don'ts for ads on Flipkart?
Yeah, I think Flipkart, the advertising platform is not as evolved as on Amazon. So you will have much fewer options there to play around with. The only thing I would suggest on Flipkart also, don't go with display ads. Stick to PLA ads till the time you reach a certain scale. I think PLA is the one that gives you the highest ROI. And stick to PLA ads for as much as the category team will always try and push you to go for display ads and all. But from my experience, I don't think that they have a very evolved display ads platform till now. So you could possibly stick to only PLA ads when it comes to Flipkart. Yeah, I think Avani, does that answer your question?
Yeah, more or less. I haven't explored a lot. I'll have to try.
Yeah, you can start with PLA. I think PLA is a good place to start.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Avani, you're awesome.
Hi, Arindam. So one very small question quickly. So we are on Swiggy, Zomato, Big Basket, Nature's Basket, etc. What we have realized is that currently we are burning, through ads also, and offering discounts at the same time? Should we be doing them simultaneously, or should we be focusing as per our marketing objective, like do we want conversions or do we want awareness? But is it ideal to have both at the same time? Because we're ending up spending so much on both, but we're not able to get returns.
Yeah. So first thing, Avni, is whenever you think of this, right, think of it at a unit level. At a unit level, are you making money or not? So if you are not making money at a unit level, then there has to be an overall broad objective to it. Saying ki you want to increase your top line, you will figure out your unit economics as you scale further. As you scale, your reliance on ads will come down, and at a unit level, you will make money at every platform. But if you are making money at a unit level, then I think it would come down to your overall business and marketing objectives. So there is no reason why you should not do both at the same time, or you should not do only one at the same time. You need to figure out what your variable costs are. Your variable costs are the margin commission that you pay, the fulfillment cost that you have, the discount cost that you have, and the advertising cost.
Yeah.
If your gross margin is covering all of these 4 variable costs, then I think you are good. If it is not covering, then I think you need to again go back to the drawing board and figure out, do you need to increase price? Do you need to cut down on ads? But between the two, whenever like we have faced this question, we have always doubled down on marketing and cut down on discounts. So because being reliant on discounts, you will not be able to, if you want to scale, right, you will not be able to do. If you want to be profitable at this scale, then yes, cutting down on discounting is perfectly fine. But if you want to grow 2x, 4x, 8x, 10x in the next 4 or 5 years, then you should cut down on discounts, focus more on awareness, figure out on who your right PG is and whether they actually have the right product market fit.
Thank you.
And then just to give you a timer thing, we are at normally.
Yeah, so we'll quickly cover it then. Yeah, and then we'll take the rest of the. Yeah, 2 hours went very fast.
I just want to ask a small question. Did you guys really have when did your profit started? I mean, when you started this thing? Because a lot goes on marketing, and you said costs and all, so discounts and the cost. When did the profit really started?
So at a unit level, our e-com business was profitable right from day one, because that's also a function of when we started. You cannot compare 2016 and 2021. So now there are brands which are flush with funds, and also it depends on the category. In our category, we don't have a single startup in our category. So in our category, all of these are listed players like a Crompton or a Havells or a Bajaj, who are very, very profit-driven company. So they'll definitely not overspend. So your profitability goes for a toss on you have funded startups in your category and they overspend without thinking about unit economics. And also the time in 2016, I think things were a lot different. I think Amazon ads were just starting off at that point. And they were the ones who were reaching out to us, ki, this is what you should do, this is how you should spend and all. So they were the ones who were doing a lot of selling to get us on that platform to sell.
Do you actually take Amazon, like these online platform, as your advertising platform, or you wanted to make profits? You wanted to increase your brand name, brand value?
Doing both. We're doing both. So we are right from day. So e-com is a huge business for us. It cannot be only an awareness medium for us. It's a proper channel for us. It's actually the most profitable channel for us, because what happens in e-com is, right, after you reach a certain scale, there is no manpower involved. So there is a team of 2 members which is running a 150 crore business, e-com business as of now. So there is no manpower cost involved. So the only cost are the variable cost. So there is no fixed cost involved here.
True.
So if you're able to reach a certain scale, and if you're able to get that flywheel moving, get a lot of your sales through organic discovery on the platform, I think that's something that definitely works. And that's the benefit of e-com. So in the long run, it definitely will be more profitable. So distribution, what happens is in distribution, you'll always need a team, right? So you'll always have your distributors margin, retailers margin. So those margins are any days much higher than what Amazon is charging.
What Amazon,
for any category.
You're true. That's right.
So that's the whole thesis, right? Or else there is no thesis to sell online.
That's
the whole thesis is in 5 years, you get to the scale where this business becomes self-sustainable.
True. Thank you.
Yeah, Sharad, do we move?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think these are points that we've already discussed: operation parameters, reviews, ratings, packaging. I think it is the first part only we had mentioned this. We can move to the next one. Again, deals, discounts. So you can use coupons, lightning deals, deal of the day. So have a very strong reference pricing in point and try and have your pricing 90-95% around that reference pricing. For 5% of the days, like Great Indian Days, Big Billion Days and all, you can go ahead with discounts and all, but don't overdo it. It's a bad customer experience for people who purchased at a higher price. It also leads to returns. Returns is very, very common because of this. One of the leading reasons for returns is people discover after purchasing that there is a cheaper version available somewhere else, or a cheaper version is available 2 days down the line. So do not overdo deals and discounts. I'm a very, very strong proponent of not discounting. We're going to move to the next one. Right. So again, this is also something that we had briefly touched. So which marketplaces to focus on, how much? I think someone had asked, do we really need to be on Amazon? You definitely not need to be on Amazon if your category is very small on Amazon and the category doesn't want to grow. Say, for example, if we had a small appliances team on Amazon who says that ceiling fan is not a focus and we don't want to grow that category, we definitely not focus much there. So how do you figure out if the category has a focus? See which are the keywords they are bidding on Google. So if you search for ceiling fan, see which are the keywords that are coming up on top. So if an e-com marketplace is really serious about a category, so say it's a cushion category. So just see how big that category is. If you search for cushion, is Amazon bidding? If yes, then yes, you can get incremental orders from there. So there is no reason not being there on Amazon. There is no harm being on Amazon. But if the category is not focusing much, if they're not intending to grow that category much, you can focus on other platforms, your own website and all. The second thing you also need to realize is the marketplace TG match with your product and brand. So this is also very important. Say, for example, Amazon is a tier 1 e-com marketplace. Flipkart would be slightly lower than Amazon. Then there will be Snapdeal, which is currently a primarily totally tier 3, tier 4 city kind of marketplace. Not saying that they are good or bad, not doing business, but then you need to figure out who your target is. If your target is a tier 1 consumer, don't waste time being on Snapdeal, or don't waste time being on Paytm where you find only deal-seeking consumers. So, but if it's a tier 1 consumer, you need to be on Cred, because Cred again is targeting the top 1% of the population. So you need to definitely figure out a way to be a part of Cred. The second thing is, again, newer upcoming marketplaces, if they're able to generate incremental sales for your brand, be a part of that. But also realize that these are relationship-driven platforms, and it also gives you a chance to be a first mover. Tomorrow, if there is a new e-com marketplace for grocery, so, and if they've raised good funds, be there. There is no reason, no harm to be there, as long as they are focusing, they want that category to grow. Yeah, we can move to the next one. Right. So these are a few key metrics that you should track on a platform-wise. There will be definitely n number of more operational metrics. But at overall level, if you are tracking your sales volume, value, returns, market share, platform-wise ads effectiveness, and percentage of order from platform ads. So sales volume and value, definitely top line. Returns affect your bottom line. Market share gives you a overall understanding where you are in that platform. Ratings and reviews, again, both the quality as well as the volume you need to track. Platform-wise ads effectiveness gives you an idea if it makes sense to keep investing in ads on that platform. And is there a chance to shift marketing money from, say, Amazon ad to a Facebook ad, or Amazon ad to a Flipkart ad, if Flipkart is more effective and is able to scale up equally. And then the last is percentage of order from ads. As you scale, this metric should keep coming down. So when we started 2016, it was around 70%. Today, it is around 10%. So if this keeps on coming down, that means your overall e-com health is on track. Overall platform level health is on track, and you are actually going to make good amount of profit from this channel. And at overall e-com level, I think what you should track is the marketing effectiveness, that is total digital spends on platform, on platform everywhere, divided by total e-com sales. And as long as this metric keeps on coming down, I think you are on the right track, because attribution definitely is not easy. You will never be able to figure out who are the people who have seen your ad on Instagram and then came to your website and then again went to Amazon to purchase, unless of course they come back to your website and register their warranty or do something like that. But if not, you'll never be able to do 100% attribution. I think attribution is a separate challenge altogether. I think we can cover that some other time, possibly how to go about attribution for a omnichannel brand. But yeah, these are the key metrics that I think Ankit is asking. Yeah, spends per revenue metric. Yeah, I think that's what spends. What we do is spends divided by the volume. So in our case, we know what our average selling price is. We do cost per sale. And because intuitively that becomes easier, because we know this is the selling price, this is the gross margin that we make, this is the contribution margin that we have in every product. So that becomes more intuitive for us. So yeah, these are the key metrics which.
Just a quick question on this, if it's possible. So let's say for branding, so these are just for performance ads, right?
Yeah.
But I'm assuming at some scale you start also doing branding ads.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you attribute if you are at marketplaces? So for example, let's say I'm doing a branding ad on Instagram, but it is not resulting in sale probably on my website, but it is resulting in sale on Amazon or somewhere else. How do you attribute your branding? So do you even attribute it in the first place?
No, I think the purpose of branding is different, right? So but the purpose of branding is brand awareness. So whether your branding ads are working or not, you will understand only if you do a brand track or you do all of these lift studies to understand whether the brand awareness is increasing or not. The second way to understand whether your branding ads are working is to see if your brand searches are increasing both on Amazon as well as on Google. On Amazon, you can easily track your brand searches, the volume of brand searches. You can track it on a weekly basis. On Google also, you can track it on a daily basis. So branding ads, you cannot directly attribute. But having said that, what helps is the overall marketing spends divided by overall sales. I think that gives a very strong and hard metric. So even if the metric goes up, you know that that is going up because you have spent some amount on branding ads. And if it's going down, nothing like it. So branding ads, ideally what you should do is in the short run, it should go up, but in the long run, your overall, that metric should again come down.
So you add in your total spend, you add the branding spend also.
Yes. That's the hardest metric. That's what I'm saying. No, that's the hardest metric to track.
And just to follow on it, so for example, let's specifically on the influencer marketing.
Yeah.
So do you attribute it towards performance, or do you go think of that as branding?
No, influencer is branding. It is not performance.
It's branding. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Aditya wants to.
Yeah, so Arindam, I had a question here. So I was basically studying a few brands internally.
Yeah.
So brands like The Minimalist and Rene Cosmetics, some of them. And these guys got like 9,000 reviews in a year of listing. You can see an ASIN level.
Yeah.
So I was just chatting with a few marketplace guys, and they said that Amazon DSP, the display programmatic ads, are delivering these volumes. It's obviously very difficult to churn these volumes at such a short span of time. Especially categories of volumes on Amazon are fairly lower.
Yeah.
Grocery and Amazon, we just got listed on Amazon Pantry, so that's helping us.
Yeah.
But I just want to get your thoughts on Amazon DSP only. Have you, or if you haven't tried it, do you know of anyone who has?
Yeah. So we haven't tried it ourselves, but we have had multiple presentations by their team as well. So
they only run the ads, right?
They only run the ads. Yes. And since they have a lot of inventory, so there is no reason why it would not work. So it's just that you need to have significant budgets to make sense out of it. With a small budget, it will not make a lot of sense. But if you have the budget, I think there's no harm in trying it out.
And what ROAS do you think one can get? I mean, because you haven't tried it, it's only speculation.
So yeah, I'll not be able to comment on that. Okay. But yes, I think you can get in touch with their team. I think they
we already are in touch. I just want we were just it's the last final step where they're thinking should we go ahead with or not, because there's no data to back it up. We have no knowledge whether it will work.
Say programmatic in general works, and since Amazon has a good set of inventory across the web, there is no reason why it should not work. So it should definitely work.
And since we're on Amazon Pantry also, now the velocity could be faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Right. And this is the last thing. I think this is one of the things that we use. I think all of you guys should track if you're not tracking your current market share. So one way to track market share is talk to the category team, understand your market share and all. But if you want to track share on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, you are able to do it from the publicly available data that Amazon shares. So every SKU, so every hour Amazon updates the top 100 bestseller rank for the category. So you figure out what the average rank for the day is for every SKU. Now you also have 4 or 5 SKUs in the top 100. So you can plot the corresponding sales of your brand against that rank, extrapolate the model to estimate sales of all bestsellers, and then you segregate brand wise, category wise, and you'll be able to track market share. So this is one thing that we started using a couple of years back, and this gives us a lot of insight on what competition is doing. Say, did Havells increase their market share in the last 1 week? What did they do? So it gives you a very strong understanding of what your competition's activities are doing. Did they do a price drop? Have they increased their overall spends? Have they increased their, what percentage of GVs they are getting on Amazon? So all of this data, your competition tracking becomes very, very important. Very, very easy if you're able to calculate the market share and if you're able to track it on a regular basis. So this is something that I would recommend all of you to do. This is something that we had figured out a couple of years back. I think a lot of people are now trying to build a tool around it, because a tool also can be built around it. So if you want to do it in-house, you can do it in-house as a very easy Excel model that you can build, or you can get a tool made for this. So, but this will definitely help you in understanding what kind of activities your competition is doing, what kind of activities are helping them getting share, helping you get share. So more than absolute numbers, it is very important to also understand track. Like someone had mentioned, they're already the bestseller. Now they are not able to scale. So if you're already the bestseller, you need to figure out what kind of percentage share that you have. Possibly you might need to have more SKUs. With a single SKU, you might have reached your limit. So these are things that calculating market shares will help, which absolute sales numbers will not help directly.
And then can I just say, I mean, we have at the moment 130 SKUs. So,
Yeah,
but I know only there is only one SKU which is doing well. So I'm just focusing on that.
Yeah. Okay. So
Because
the others are not there in the top 100 as well.
No, I mean the 130 SKUs, it's there. People just buy, but obviously it's not there as the bestsellers. You have to put in a lot to make it a bestseller. No?
So the top 100 bestseller, I think you should have multiple SKUs. If you're having 130 SKUs.
I don't know. It's too price sensitive and too competitive market. We've been trying from last 4 years. So
fair enough. Some categories definitely might be like that. Yeah.
But it was an amazing session, I should say. A lot to learn through your session.
Yeah, Sharath, so I am done from my end. I think we have already taken a lot of questions. And if we have more, I think we can take. Also, yeah, I think you are on mute, Sharath.
Sorry. Anyone has any last 1-2 questions? We obviously gone overboard, but I always tell everyone and even Anandam, it's a great sign because everyone is super engaged on this topic and there are more questions than we have time to answer. But the idea of again, a lot of these sessions is to open minds, to create new questions in our minds so that we can take over the weeks to sort of solve that for our own brands and businesses. That being said, I think so. We have 2 questions, and I think these are the last questions. We'll sort of pick up, right? So Ramya, you want to? Arindam, is it okay? Can we take 2 questions?
Yes, you can do that.
Wanted to ask about like if you have any experience or know of people who have experience with the international marketplaces, and when is a good time for a brand to start, investing time into that.
Yes, so I think Amazon has a global program. I think they have a global launchpad program, and you can possibly reach out to them. They would definitely be the right people to help with respect to data, with respect to how big your category is, in which countries are there. And there are definitely a lot of brands which are selling internationally. Vadam Teas is there, who is doing very well. Wow Skincare have started. So there are a lot of D2C brands who are doing it.
Is this something like the Amazon Launchpad? Like
no, they have a global program. It's something separate from. So the global program is to take Indian brands global.
Okay.
So you can reach out to them. I think they'll definitely be able to help.
Thank you.
Also, just to add, Ramya, we will have Vadam's marketing head as one of the sessions.
So, yeah, I think Ankit has mentioned that Damensh has also signed up for international. I think, there are.
I'll get in touch.
Great. I think now we have 4 questions. We cannot put 4 questions, do we? So, quick questions. Who hasn't asked maybe? So Sachin, you put quick, and then Satyajit will fast.
Yeah, Arindam, you told you were focusing on some parts about category manager. So how do we get hold of the category manager?
How do you get hold of the category manager? So I think a launchpad would be a good way to start if you are very early stage. See, category manager, CloudTail. So all of this come to you when you have reached some scale. So once say you reach 1% market share in the category, that becomes big. So automatically you get assigned these category managers. I think before that, I would also not have an idea. So how we did was, after we reached certain scale, they reached out to us. So initially it will be account manager which will reach out to you, and then slowly the category team will also start interacting with you once you reach say 2%, 3%, 4% market share in that category.
Okay.
Satyajit?
Yeah, Arindam.
Yeah.
So all these learnings of yours, has it been purely experiential or thanks to the books behind you? Or any course that you've kind of gone through, that one thing?
No, I think, see, with respect to e-com, I think everything is experiential because there are no books related to e-com or how digital is working. But yes, fundamentals of marketing, fundamentals of sales, I think, yes, done a lot of reading.
Okay. But no courses as such?
No courses. I think this is the best thing that you could do. So you're there with 40 people. I think if we can exchange, all of us exchange learnings with each other, I think no book will or no course will be able to do that.
Incredible.
Just a quick question. So have you tried reselling, so Meesho or something like that? Have you tried them as channels?
For a premium brand like us, it will not work. See, reselling platforms work when there is no price discovery. So it is very, very simple. If someone is not able to discover, say, for example, I'm selling cashew nuts or something, but cashew nuts can be sold at 100 rupees, 200 rupees, 250 rupees, anything. Or if I'm selling a sari, so I don't know what that price that sari is for. That can be sold at 500 rupees on Meesho, 700 rupees on Amazon with a different name. But when you're trying to build a brand, reselling never works because price discovery happens. So LBB or a Meesho or something like that, or any reselling platform will not work.
Got it. So like if we are looking at building a brand, like for example, we are majorly into bed sheets.
Yeah.
Right? So same, we don't have a price channel because no one knows the price of anything in this sense.
Yeah.
And reselling is something a lot of our customers just ask because housewives just by default, like that category is a very fit for us. But we have also been very wary of it because of the same reason that it might.
You will not be able to build a brand. See, if you are a local bedsheet supplier from Surat, right, then you can do it. But if you want to build a brand out of it, then reselling is something you should not do.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we have luckily we've still managed to stay within 10 minutes beyond time. So first, thank you all for coming in. I want to first thank Arindam for his time and if we can, I know we've done it already, but just one more time because Arindam has taken out extra time. So please turn on your cameras, all of whoever's in this session, for Arindam. In general, obviously there are so many questions which we have. I was honestly curious with the amount of questions that Arindam patiently answered before in his first slide itself. And I've interacted with him in the past on multiple occasions because I really feel he's a true teacher. And like he said, right, his entire learnings have been experiential. They've built a brand from scratch, literally online. And he's one of those people I'm convincing to be more actively involved in the program whenever he has the time, right? Given his other commitments that he's doing with. So Arindam, what we do. So first, thank you for doing this for all of us. I appreciate you taking out the time and sharing your insights and journey. If anyone wants to contact you, they can reach out to you on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn and Twitter, yeah.
Yes, by the way, his is one of those Twitter handles, like I said, I highly recommend. A lot of those insights which is not covered in performance, you will see in threads in Twitter. So if you're not on Twitter, follow Arindam Paul. I do. And it is really, really insightful because this knowledge is not being shared otherwise. That being said, thank you, Arindam. And one more thing which we do is, we do a sign off. To thank you. It's something like our form. So Arindam, you can join us. Basically, what we do is we play background music. I hope you can hear it. And then we just put our hands in front of the screen. So everyone, just for Arindam, it's like a standing ovation for you taking out the time with us.
Thank you.
And if you want to join us, you can do that. You can put your hands in front of the screen. You do a countdown. So everyone, unmute yourself. Also, sorry, I always forget that. but whoever can unmute yourself, we'll do a countdown between, we do 3, 2, 1, and then we do go team. Okay? So, ready? 3, 2, 1, go team. Good everyone. Thank you, Arindam.
Thank you, Arindam. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank
What a
you,
pleasure.
Arindam.
Thanks, Arindam. Thank you, Arindam. Great session.
Please do connect offline. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to all of you guys next week. Next week is performance.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sharat.
Bye. Bye.